take to get their attention back and get them grounded again?
We always practice the day after on a Sunday, kind of like how football does it a little bit. I always like to, after a game, whether you win it or lose it, that next day, kind of put it to bed, and you have to give them an off day, and you want to, a week. So then it's Tuesday that's usually off. So by doing that, when you have an extremely, it's usually the higher elation game, that's always harder actually, because you're pretty wired. Then you come in and a lot of the players are a little sore, the ones that played a lot of minutes. But I thought they got it. It wasn't, obviously the intensity of a practice coming off of that weekend, but I think they understood, that they understand the mission, and they know that, it's not that long ago, where we were just coming up short. So I think it was just a really great moment, but they understand that there could be some really greater moments ahead, and that really starts with Thursday night.
You never want to have a losing streak, but having that losing streak, do you feel like that helps with the focus off the big win, knowing, hey, like we've already been through a losing streak, like that can happen pretty easily?
I think, I just think going through any adversity, right, once you get a little farther from it, you can see the good that came out of it, but you don't really want to go back. So I think they're cognizant of it, but we don't spend a lot of time about it. We're just more about, okay, we're building, we're stacking, stacking good play. And that's, I think, the thing that I'm most excited about is that we've been stacking pretty consistently some good, better play. Starting that Washington game, had some, not great minutes in quarters, against, Northwestern, but they're really, pretty competitive, Northwestern is. So I was happy with how we competed. It looked better. The flow was better, with the exception when we didn't handle the pass at USC, in the USC game. So what I'm looking for is that continued growth in what we're flowing or how we're flowing. And if we do that, then hopefully another win will be stacked.
I'm sure you're treating every practice the same as you were a couple weeks ago, but in terms of what you see out of the team during practices, do you sense a little bit more energy, more spirit these last couple of days compared to where you were at a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I really think back, our practice in Seattle, at Seattle University, the intensity of which they attacked that practice was tremendous. Down, disappointed, but they've really showed up all the time. This will be the first time I've seen them since Monday's practice, and Monday's practice was solid. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, it was kind of how you feel after an elation, and the coaches are usually trying to set that standard. So I will be very surprised if they don't look like that same team, because there's only been maybe 2 practices since we all got together where I think we're not great, maybe. And I don't even think one of those was during that skid. So hopefully, to go back to your point, I don't want to talk about that growing period of adversity, but I would like to think it's certainly a motivator.
So are you to the point where you expect the same defensive intensity every game now, like what you got against USC? How do you sustain that?
Well, that's been us the whole thing. So I don't think that was, it just got showcased because we were playing a top 4 team. But I think the reason we had the success we have had has started with our defense. So it needs to continue. I just think that particular game, it got a lot more hype because we were playing one of the nation's greatest players. But our defense has to be there, because that's what I've been really saying. When we graduated that many people, that was the area I thought we could kind of, lessen a gap. And I think for the most part, it really has held, and it needs to, because our offense, we can go some stretches where we're not scoring. In the past, that didn't happen as much, largely due to, Caitlin just doesn't let that ball be idle. So yes, to your question, but I do think our defense has been why we've really have been in every single game.
As pivotal as moving on is, you obviously want to move on with the confidence gained from Sunday, whether it's Lucy or Leah, Addie, anyone. Just how much do you feel like that is the case, and that there is a stronger belief in everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you have to hope now, because I think when you go through the slide that we did is, I really truly believe we were always closer than farther, because I saw more moments of what you saw in the USC than what you guys could see sometimes in just the games. And what you like to think as a coach is when they get one of those, right? Then everything that you've been trying to instill and set them up for when they make the play, when they get the stop, and then they get such a moment of jubilation, it's like, yeah, we can. Let's go, let's continue. But it's a peculiar thing when you are coming out of one of those adverse times. That also takes time to build up. So when you're going in, it'd be nice if you had the next one at home too, to kind of get a little bit more building on that confidence and that inner belief. So that'll be the big challenge going into a rivalry game at Minnesota. They're having a really great year, especially with the loss of Mara Braun. Dawn and her staff, I think Dawn and I have been doing this a long time, and I'm really happy for her success. And that's hard to do without Mara Braun. Woodson's on the bench for them. So they're playing really, really well. And they're, a lot like us did. They kind of flirted with that top 25, and they're right on the cusp of that. So it's not going to be an easy game to kind of keep that belief system up. But if we can do that, I think that'll really be the tale of the last, part of this season.
What stands out about Minnesota? What are the biggest challenges that they're going to pose?
They're just really balanced. They're almost everybody's in, like, 3 of them average 10, the others are 8, pushing 9. Sophie Hart is a really, just a solid, very productive post player. Her O boards, she's averaging about 4 O boards a game, and that's hard to do. That's great. So I think she's really solid. A lot of these kids have come to our camp, so them pretty well, and they're just really, really great players. Battle is, when she gets rolling, she's as good as anybody in the league. Her pull-up's really smooth. She runs the team really well. Burkalski, she just nails threes. She was a teammate of Tegan Mulaney, and those guys on the circuit were like rain and threes, right? She actually committed with Dawn to West Virginia, so then she followed her to here. But just the balance, and so that's just such a different shift. We just got done with the team with Juju being mostly the center and Kiki. So now, and that's what's fun about the game plans. Just that, and anything happens in kind of a border war. It's just, they run a motion with different sets, and, they do a pretty good job, I think, trying to keep it out of the post, doubling every now and then. So we're going to have to be sharp.
They lead the Big Ten in fewest turnovers per game. What do you see their job security ball security wise that they do well?
We all like job security.
Yeah.
They're just, Amaya was one of the best players in Minnesota Battle, and she's really smart. She doesn't make too many unforced mistakes. She takes what's there, and all of them play that way. They play within themselves, and they know their stuff really well. So they're not out to really make a wow pizzazz play and try to test the odds. And I think that's why their turnovers are down. They're just really, really sound, and they got a really great player running them. So that's what what I've watched, I've just been impressed with. They just kind of do what they do, and they do it really efficiently.
Looking at their defense, I was kind of surprised to see they've played 6 games against the net top 50, and they've allowed 65 threes on defense in those games. When you see a number like that, how do you kind of, what do you take away from that? Does 6 games feels like a big enough sample size to say maybe that's an issue for them? Or?
Yeah, well, I think they're probably playing analytics. They've played some bets. They've doubled, right? Sarah Williams from Wisconsin, they doubled. Both of them are the key cogs to those wheels. So I feel like you I don't know if that's who they are, they have been the whole year, or that's who they are when they're playing these centers. So when you do that, it does cause a lot of rotations. And then you're letting up a three, but sometimes that's the people you want to shoot it. You'd rather have, so-and-so shoot it than Lauren Betts. You'd rather have, they wanted anybody else on the Wisconsin roster to shoot it other than Sarah Williams. So I think that's why I wouldn't, to me, I don't know if I know that's an issue. I think it's a decision. And then, for the most part, it's worked out, I think, to where they got previously, because I think that's probably what they've been doing against some of the other posts. I just didn't watch anything too much in the non-con.
You mentioned the conversation you had with Lucy in the third quarter. What did anything change about the way she carried herself? Maybe like.
Well, I mean, I've kind of felt badly, like she did all that, but I just felt she was playing so tight. And I just know what she's capable of. I also know what it feels like to be a pleaser. Sometimes, I've grown up like that too. So she wants to do so well for everybody. And so when you're trying to get the look, you're trying to run the play, and you're trying to make the read, that all of a sudden you're not your best. And then you can start to doubt. And I was just reminding her. And I don't even know if it was my reminder that helped or not. I'm just thrilled that she was able to, I think probably for the first time, really showcase what she's capable of doing. But now the trick for her too is to kind of harness that and to do that more consistently. But I just think, she came here with a lot of, different aspirations too. And we know the love of the fan base, but the weight of it, and you want to perform so well. So I was just really happy, and then her recognition this week in the conference and certainly nationally, it was just a really cool moment for her. So I'm hopeful that freedom, that's all I was trying to do, is just free her mind. And I'm not certain that I did anything, but I think it helped when she got one of those early ones to fall.
One thing Lisa
Yeah.
talked about when it got to be February, she always talked about getting a double bye for the Big Ten tournament. You're kind of in position now where, stack a few more wins, you can avoid playing on Wednesday,
Right.
and, get into that 8-9 game or something like that. Is that something
Yeah,
in the
no,
back
I
of
think,
your mind?
my whole thing, it's always been, you always want to be playing your best basketball in February. So the thing that I was most thrilled about, well, equally, I suppose, it was great to get the win on that particular day against that particular opponent. But I think we showed that we've made some strides. Now, can we be consistent? And so if we're playing our best basketball in February, then that kind of, takes us into that we can now look realistically at that goal, right? So, earlier on, I didn't talk a whole lot about that because I knew how tough the big would be. And then when we got into it, then it was like, woo. Then another focus was just trying to, holding serve with, confidence. But I do think that is realistic. But I'm also realistic with how tough the league is. There's just so many, 50-50 games. The Indiana's, to me, right? Indiana, the Nebraska, anyone at home, Maryland. So those have, they didn't go our way. And so now we're playing, a few of those the next week here. But if we can get those to fall our way, then yeah, I would love that. And I think that's a goal that we've had all of our years working together, and certainly one that I'll continue. But now also with the big, the way it is, not everybody gets to go. So there's different tiers depending on who's spiraling or who is aspiring. But that would be definitely a great goal, and that's what we're shooting for.
Along those lines,
Yeah.
So much that's talked about in the college basketball world right now is in context of what does it mean for the NCAA tournament, or what does it mean for this and that. Your teams of the past few years didn't seem to struggle with that very much. Is that something that you ignore, bring up?
Yeah,
Just kind of how does that work?
It's it's been a while, right? So I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think that I've talked about it earlier when we were facing what we're the adversity part. But I think it's the way you deliver it. It's kind of factual, right? It is when you're in the skid It's like, okay, well, this is what we got to do to get out, but this is what we got to do, long term. And so I mentioned it earlier, but my philosophy is the only thing that takes care of that is what we do today. And if you worry too much about what's going to happen at the end, then you really lose what you can accomplish today. So my philosophy is, obviously I'm new and we haven't been on that fence for a while, but it's just acknowledge it. This is, what happened to get us here. But if we just keep taking care of now, we can still hit where we'd like to be. And I think the interesting thing, and I wouldn't trust it one way or the other, if I was a mid-major or if I'm a power 4, you don't know what that committee is going to think. Sometimes they lean way, to like, oh, the power 4s, no, too many get in. We're going to pay more attention here. Sometimes it's the other way, and it goes year to year. You have people complaining after the seeding, who gets left out, all the things. And this particular year with the expansion, I don't know what that committee is going to favor. So it's a unique year to be on the bubble because it's all brand new.